right. Hello, hello. Thank you for being here today. I hope your morning session went well, and now you're gonna get some information about this project, TSTM, which I turned into a snazzy title with totally smart teaching materials, but it really stands for Teaching Skills That Matter. And Leah and I, as well as Patsy, actually all have firsthand knowledge about this initiative, and we will get to that in just a moment. My name is Stephanie Sommers. I work for Minneapolis Adult Education. I'm also a Atlas consultant, and I have been involved with this project since 2019. As a coach. Last year I worked with teachers from Pennsylvania, and this year I am working with teachers from Texas. What about you, Leah?
Well, I'm Leah Olson, and I work with the St. Paul Adult Education, specifically with the Hub Center. And I worked with this initiative the first year, 2019 through 2020 as a coach, and I coached the state of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm. So we have a few objectives for today. We hope that at the end of our time, you'll be able to articulate the background and purpose of the Teaching Skills That Matter initiative. We're going to show you how to access some resources, and those are primarily housed on the lynx website. We're going to walk you through how to navigate the TSTM toolkit, which is a large resource that can be downloaded from the lynx website. We're going to look at a sample lesson and kind of go over the components, because then you would sort of understand the layout of the toolkit. We're going to talk about how to adapt a sample lesson, and then at the end we'll share some ideas for how you might use this resource in the future.
Okay, some background on the project. So first of all, this is loaded with acronyms, so have fun. But I wrote them all out. So you'll have learned like 6 different acronyms by the time we finish this one slide. The first one is Teaching Skills That Matter, TSTM. And this project came out of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, in 2014. And this legislation required that we increase access to employment, education and training for individuals who had barriers. So it was to help our some more of our struggling folks get work and get the kind of training they needed to upskill and become part of our employment. So that also this legislation was to highlight some basic academic skills, critical thinking skills, digital literacy skills, and self-management skills. And this is something Minnesota has been doing for before WIOA, and with our with Atlas's program on ACEs, right? So we have all of those ACEs transitions integration skills with the TIF. So we were way ahead of the game. But after the legislation came about, then the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education, there's our next acronym, OCTAE, they saw that there was a great need in the field for some support for teachers to be able to do this. So they contracted with American Institutes of Research, or AIR, and they created this nationwide initiative to support the training of ABA teachers for effective integration of the different skills that are highlighted and expected from the WIOA legislation. Great, go ahead.
Sorry, Leah.
Okay.
All right.
Oh wait, there's I think one before that, right?
Yes. Nope. I'm going in the wrong order. There we are.
No worries. So 2 of the components.
I'm having a meltdown. I'm sorry.
No worries. You're in the driver's seat. You get to do whatever you want, Stephanie. But I do want to see if I can talk about the toolkit, and this is just the overview. There's really 2 components to this initiative. The first is this toolkit that provides information about what these skills are, what the subject areas are, and what the instructional approaches are. templates that we can use for unit and lesson plans, vetted lessons that you can try out in your classes. I don't want to say try out because they're great, right? That you can use in your classes that integrate these skills that matter. And then the second component, which is really unique and very effective approach to training, is the training model, where the initiative set up a group of coaches from around the country and then matched them with different states. And those states had a cohort of a state PD provider and at least 2 teachers that would seek the training, and they would meet. It used to be we meet face to face, and now it's virtual. The coach would meet with that cohort and help them with integrating the skills using the lessons from the toolkit. You're welcome, Stephanie, if you want to add anything else about the training, since I haven't been involved for 1 year in this new environment.
Sure. I guess one thing that is nice about this training model is there is a coach of coaches as well. And so that is Susan Finn Miller. And it's another resource that the coaches and the teachers all have access to is a discussion board on lynx. And so there's a lot of opportunity to share ideas, to problem solve through that community of practice. So the whole idea here is that a lot of research shows that change is more likely to happen and new practices are more likely to be adapted or adopted, I guess I should say, if they are done within a coaching model.
Right.
All right. Now we are ready to share the components of the toolkit. So this particular toolkit, the TSTM toolkit, has sort of 3 components. The whole project kind of is built around these 3 components. And we say 953. So there are 9 central skills, and you can see those in the blue box there. These are the skills that matter. Those of you familiar with ACES TIFF, as Leah mentioned earlier, will definitely recognize number 2, number 3, number 5, number 9. All are right out of our ACES TIFF as well. These are also common professional or soft skills that show up again and again in different research that's been done about what adults really need to be successful out in their communities, in higher education, or in work. The 5 topic areas that the toolkit is divided into are civics education, digital literacy, financial literacy, health literacy, and workforce preparation. And again, the people who planned all of this identified these 5 areas as being very critical to adult learners being able to make good decisions that are going to impact them and their families and be able to really move forward in their own lives. Each of these areas of the toolkit was developed by a national expert in this field. So for example, the digital literacy section was written by Jen Vanek, who many of you might know, and the civics education section was written by Betsy Parrish, who I'm sure many of you know. And then the third part of TSTM has to do with these 3 instructional approaches: project-based learning, problem-based learning, and integrated and contextualized instruction. And these 3 approaches are really geared towards sort of wrapping together different standards or different objectives so that a single lesson could have students practicing a variety of skills. And so taken on the whole, each toolkit lesson practices some of the 9 central skills. There is an example in each section of a lesson that uses each of those 3 approaches. And then again, the toolkit on the whole is organized by those 5 topic areas. Okay. And please do use the chat if you have questions as we're going through this. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, most of the information about TSTM is housed on the Lynx website. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Lynx. Lynx is a clearinghouse of information for adult education. And so you can find TSTM information under the federal initiatives section of the Lynx website. We're going to actually go to the website in just a moment, but you can see there is like sort of a place for you to click for each of those 5 topic areas, as well as a general overview. And so you can see from the overview here, each of these is a link to a PDF document that would tell you a little bit more about the toolkit. So just go a little bit more in depth. There are 5 downloadable lesson plans for each topic area, as well as a research brief. And these different lessons were again developed by subject matter experts, and they were reviewed by Patsy Egan and Jamie Adelson Goldstein to make sure that there was some continuity between the lessons and that they were standards aligned as much as possible, and that they really are robust, well-constructed lessons. As I've already mentioned, there's an example for each of the 3 instructional approaches. So each section will have 1 problem-based lesson plan, 1 project-based lesson plan, and 1 that is integrated and contextualized instruction. And then another component, in addition to the toolkit, are these videos. And I see Leah smiling because Leah and I are featured in some of these videos. So this whole project just has so many Minnesota connections. And the idea of the instructional videos is to sort of highlight these different approaches, show people what it might look like in different types of classrooms. So Leah's video is the one on project-based learning. I believe actually Leah has project and problem-based learning, which she filmed with her students at Hubs. The video that I was filmed for is the one on integrated and contextualized instruction. And so it's nice because, as I'm sure many of you know, there is not a lot in the way of like instructional videos specifically for ABE. And so these feature ABE teachers, ABE classrooms, ABE students, and that makes them unique. There are also eventually, I believe these are still being created, there will be a video for each of the different topic areas. I know the one for financial literacy is available now because that also has yours truly in it, talking about one of the toolkit lessons on household cash flow. So there are a lot of nice components to this. And Leah I'm sure Leah mentioned this earlier, the way that this is being rolled out is last year was the first year, it was the pilot year. There were 5 states that participated, and there were teachers in each of those states worked with coaches to try out these lessons, and then there were revisions made. And so what you have now at this point really is something that's been field tested in classrooms across the country, from rural Arkansas to right outside of Philadelphia to everywhere in between. So you can trust that these are going to be of good quality. All right, Leah.
Yeah, great. So just to dip into the toolkit, and then we'll visit the website very quickly as well. This is how it's distributed. So it has 5 sections. The civics education, it actually has 7 sections, but the first 5 are civics education, digital literacy, health literacy, financial literacy, and workforce preparation off of the 5 subject areas. And as Stephanie explained, it has 3 of those lessons in there for the 3 approaches under each section. So a real robust toolkit to pull from. Go ahead. And then, oh, 8, sorry. Section 6 is it's talking about those effective instructional approaches, such as project-based learning, problem-based learning, and integrated contextualized instruction. So you can get more information about those 3 approaches. The section 7 has templates and tools to use so that you can diversify what kind of content you're going to use using the lesson plan that's provided, using the unit templates. And then section 8 has a lot of resources that you can look into. So, it's annotated, so it tells you what information they have, it describes them, and some reference lists. So a lot of things to pull from something that's just ready to go into the classroom to something that you can research yourself. And so this is one of the screenshot of part of that website, and we are going to go over to the website for a few minutes.
Yes, give me 1 second, folks, because we have to do a little bit of fancy dancy stuff with resharing here, the screen, and hopefully you're seeing the website. Yes?
Got
Perfect. All right.
All right. So the only thing is, can you go use the back arrow because it's on the second screen that we visited together when we practiced? I want to go to.
I sure can.
Yes, thank you. And scroll up to the top. Thank you.
Here we are.
Okay, so here's what it's going to look like when you go to the main page for teaching skills that matter in adult education. And if you just Google it too, you don't have to remember the URL, just Google teaching skills that matter, and this will pop up right here. So you can see that they list the 9 skills, the 5 topic or subject areas, and the 3 approaches. And then if you go down, you will see that they have these wonderful little icons that you can click and open up. We have the civics education there, all those 5 areas, other tools and resources at the end, and then our overview at the beginning. So Steph, could you click on that overview for us? I just want to give them.
Is it okay? Actually, Leah, I will go ahead for just 1 second and say this conference that took place last June was, fairly valuable. It took place over a couple of days, and there were lots of different people talking about the toolkit and how to use it and the coaching model. And there were teachers from the pilot year talking about how they used it with their students and the impact that it made. So if you are interested in learning more, that might be something worth checking out. I believe Leah and I both were presenters, and I believe Patsy was as well. In fact, I'm sure of it. So here we go to the overview.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was important. So then we've got how you can get into the contents of the toolkit. You can see what it all has. It has an introduction to it. It goes deeper into defining what all of those skills are. It defines each of the aspects of the TSTM. So you can see that defining the topic areas, defining the approaches, and overview of approaches that work. And then, voila, down at the bottom are the instructional videos for your viewing pleasure. And okay, so it's like a bittersweet situation because we filmed these when we were in the classroom with our students. So when they were released during COVID, it really did bring tears to my eyes and just a yearning to be back in the classroom with my students. So they're really great. Even without me, you can take me totally out of it, and just watching the students, it's just so fun to see the students interacting together and knowing that one day soon we will all be together again.
Great. And then if it's okay, Leah, I'll just in case this isn't clear. So then you would navigate to the different sections over here. So we would have, the civics, and then here are all the different things, the issue brief, the case study, the handouts that go along with the lessons. If we go to financial literacy, you've got the same things, but then here we've got that video, which I myself have not brought myself to be able to watch yet, but I understand it's pretty good. I know the video you'll hear from Thomas, who was the subject matter expert for this section. And I do believe they also they tracked down almost a year later and interviewed some of the students who were in the class on that day and got their feedback about what it was like doing the lesson. So great videos. Eventually, I believe the plan is to have one for each of the 5 areas. Okay. So I'm going to, again, stop sharing this. We're going to go back to sharing the PowerPoint. Yep, like that. Look at that. I did it. I told them I wouldn't be able to do it, and I did it. All right. So now we are going to look at a sample lesson. So this lesson was actually added in some revisions that were made to the toolkit between year 1 and year 2. It is a general lesson to introduce the skills that matter, and it was created by Susan Finn Miller. So we wanted to just highlight a few things about the lesson because they have tried to make the formatting pretty similar throughout. So you'll notice at the top, there's an NRS level, there's a title, there's an approximate length of lesson, then we've got our instructional objectives, as well as learning targets, and then those standards, the academic standards. So all of that information is provided for you. Then I will say all of the general lesson plans follow this format. And what I mean by general lesson plans is the lesson plans that are project-based and problem-based, I believe have slightly different language to the left in what's that light blue column, because they take you through the specific stages of those types of lessons. Otherwise, the lessons are all similar, that we start with an introduction, we go into explanation and modeling. If there are links to materials that you'll need, they're included in the lesson plan. There's guided practice, application, and extended practice, and a student reflection. And then, so it's nicely formatted, giving you an approximate time, the materials you'll need, everything's right there. And the purpose of this lesson is to have students learning about those central skills and when we use them. The lesson, the main sort of activity is this expert jigsaw activity where students learn about and become experts about each of the central skills. So they would be put in groups. Each group would be assigned a skill, and then they create a few slides or a poster to share, and that's how they teach the information. And so you're provided with a sample, and the sample has to do with critical thinking. And so the slides that you look at here talk about when's a time when we might use critical thinking. So that's the critical thinking scenario. And this one's talking about a tornado and the Red Cross. Then there's a second scenario where someone is thinking about taking a few, she's got a couple different job offers. And so she's collecting information about these different companies so she can decide what might be best for her. So the students are asked to kind of define the skill, identify a few scenarios in which one would use these skills, and then the final part of it is a discussion. How do we use critical thinking skills? Why is critical thinking important? And so the students in creating these slides would be using all kinds of things. They'd be collaborating, they'd be analyzing and processing information, and then they would be teaching out their slides to the larger group when they were ready. The lesson provides you with this note-taking scaffold that you could give to your students so that when each group is presenting, the students could be taking notes. And then at the end, of course, they would have, a couple pages of notes explaining what each of these skills are. And then if you continue to use the toolkit, you'll go back again and again to talking about these skills. So this would become a reference guide. Another activity that's included in this lesson that's ready for you to use is this nice exit ticket, where the students are kind of self-assessing how well they understand each of the skills and maybe when they use them. And all of this you could download. And in fact, all of this is available in the participant folder for this session. And I believe we are also going to be chatting out a link to them. And I'm seeing a few different messages in the chat here. So I believe that the CEUs will be distributed after you complete the evaluation for today. So there'll be an evaluation for day 1 and day 2. After completing the evaluation, you will get your CEUs. That do the lessons focus on ELL classrooms. So these lessons were developed to be used in a variety of classrooms. And a lot of the lessons have a little section where it talks about some possible adaptations. To be honest with you, I think a lot of the lessons do lean a little bit towards the ELL side of things, but they can be adapted. I know some of the teachers I've coached are definitely HSE GED teachers, and they have used them with a lot of success. So great. And then Leah says the lessons are leveled so that you can see what the level is and decide if it is appropriate for your learners. So they have done some work around doing like providing that information within the toolkit. All right. So now we are going to go into some breakout rooms. And Leah, do you want to explain what we'll be doing in there? Leah, you're muted. No worries.
Of course I am. Okay, so breakout rooms. So the lesson that Stephanie just demoed for you, just explained the pieces. I know you're already thinking about, wow, how would I use that with my students? Or my students are a little bit lower, or like the question in the chat about if these lessons are geared for ABE students or EL students. So now's your opportunity to really talk about that and think about how this particular lesson could be adapted for your students in your setting. And then additionally, if you are currently teaching remotely, how would you adapt it for a remote setting? And so we have a good amount of time. I think we have like 10 minutes in the chat to do this. If you run out of things to talk about, please go to the optional questions at the bottom, which then bring us to an application question. Which central skills would you be most interested in practicing with students and why? And which of the 5 subject areas interest you? Okay, so plenty to talk about. We are ready to have you move into your breakouts.
Great. And just a note about the breakouts, if you have a question while you're in there, there is an ask for help button, or if you need to leave and go to the main room for any reason, just do that. And there's an option to do that as well. And you'll be given a 1-minute warning to come back. So here we are. You do need to hit the join button to go to your room.
So again, when we go to and from breakout rooms, sometimes you might have to readjust your audio. You can also stop sharing your video. And hopefully that was some good sharing time to chat about the idea of using a new resource and maybe just more generally about how you teach some of these skills already in your classroom, or how you cover some of those different topic areas. So as we come back, Leah has added a couple of questions here for sort of a large group share out. So in your breakout rooms, what adaptation to this lesson for students did you discuss? Oh, Leah, we should be 1 and 2. What adaptations for remote learning did you discuss? I
No.
think they're 1 and 1 because like, how can we rank those two?
Oh, exactly. They're not rankable, if that's a
right.
word. They can't be ranked. 1 and 1.
That's right. So we invite people, if you'd like to unmute, you could put your name in the chat. If you would like to just make a comment, you can again use the chat. We would love to know about some of what your discussion looked like. I will say in the breakout room I was in, we talked about how really all of these lessons have a lot of possibility for adaptation. And I shared one example from when I was coaching last year. One of the lessons from digital literacy, I think, involves bringing in pictures, and the lesson itself wasn't really suited for the classroom. So instead, my HSE teacher did political cartoons. So students went out, they looked for political cartoons. The real learning in the lesson is supposed to be about manipulating images and adding them to a document that you can share. So he still was able to practice those skills. He just used content that was more appropriate for his students who were preparing for learning more about social studies. So what else? Who else would like to share something that they talked about? Heather. We talked about ways to make these lessons available asynchronously so that students can engage with each other with tools like Padlet and Jamboard. Yes. Leah, when Leah and I were both doing this last year, we made in-person site visits. This year, they're all virtual, and I have gotten to see some really amazing tools that I've never used myself, but GoFormative, I saw a lesson this week using GoFormative, using Edpuzzle to take a video and put it into Edpuzzle and then add questions. I've seen some amazing work using Nearpod and these like awesome collaborative boards where students can add images and text. It has been very cool to see all of that. Dan says, we discussed some additional scaffolding with vocabulary about skills and thinking. Yep, so maybe bringing down the level of that lesson just a little bit. We discussed how we may have to break this down over multiple days because our classes are not 2 hours long. Yes, and so as I've been observing this year, I have seen a lot of people needing to chunk out the lessons a little bit. All right, so Patsy's reminding me we need to move on. Leah, was there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up with our poll at the end?
Well, I was just going to say that I have seen some very successful adaptations to the lessons. So don't be afraid to change the content, but keep the truth of the lesson, right? Like the integrity of the lesson. It's not what it's called. There's a word for it. But anyway, yeah, use your creativity to adapt these lessons for your students and your setting.
Yes, your adaptive expertise. And Elizabeth says, for higher levels, look at a list of common job interview questions. Yeah, we just actually talked about this in an ACES webinar, helping students to talk about their own transferable skills. And then you could use those in interviewing situations. So that's a great idea. Thanks, Elizabeth. And using L1 for abstract vocabulary when teaching adults ESL to scaffold. Yep, so teaching our students that it's okay for them to take notes or to kind of internalize these new words in their first language is great. Great ideas. Thank you, everyone. So kind of at the end, we were going to do a little poll. So we are asking you to identify which central skills would you be most interested in practicing with your students? Maybe I'm not sure if we can answer the and why part in the poll, but you can identify the skills for sure. I think the and why was my bad there.
And then if you scroll down, that second question is actually attached to the same poll.
And then which of the 5 topic areas interest you? So we tried to turn into a poll discussion questions, but you get the general idea of it, folks. So we'll keep this open. We've got 10 people, 11 people. We've got quite a few people in this session, so we're looking for a few more folks to answer. It looks like right now workforce preparation is kind of leading the pack as far as the 5 topic areas. And it looks like communication and navigating systems are 2 front runners as far as the central skills go. Navigating systems so important now more than ever. We've got 30 people having voted. We
That's
can probably
almost
share.
everyone.
We can
Yeah,
probably share that.
let me just share those results. Can you see those?
I can.
Great.
Yeah, so it looks like communication was our top winner for essential skills, so important. And it looks like workforce preparation with that clear WIOA overlap was the topic area winner. So excellent, thank you. All right, so to end this session today, we want to, of course, thank Patsy and Astrid and everyone at Atlas who makes this whole thing run like clockwork. You have now a break for 45 minutes. So please get up and enjoy, and the afternoon sessions begin at 1 o'clock. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Leah.
Great. Thanks, everyone. The link to the flyer is in the chat. I'll stop the recording, although if you have questions, you're welcome to hang out for a minute with us.